Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's eSpeaks, we're talking about machine learning, and we're focusing on the SageMaker solution, which is the machine learning platform offered by Amazon Web Services. To discuss that, I'm joined by a major expert in the field. With me is Bratin Saha, Vice President and General Manager, Machine Learning Services at Amazon Web Services. Bratin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, James. It's a pleasure being here.
So I think it's really interesting about machine learning is that a lot of businesses want to get on board. I mean, there's enormous power there, competitive power, because of course an ML model is an algorithm working in concert with data. It's not just an algorithm, so there's a lot that can be done with it. But businesses are often frustrated. I mean, they're trying to deploy it and ends up being costly and difficult and does sometimes even work. And do you sense frustration out there among executives, or are things going better than I think they are?
We are seeing a lot of action, a lot of momentum, and a lot of optimism with our customers of what machine learning can make possible. Now, to take a step back, machine learning has been around for a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
And we in Amazon ourselves, we started investing in machine learning more than a couple of decades back and transformed our business. If you look at Amazon Alexa and Go and Primeware and Amazon.com and so on, so forth. But up until recently, machine learning was something that only a few experts could do. And so, up until a few years back, it was something that wasn't broadly accessible to our customers. And now, in more recent times, thanks to the advent of the cloud and thanks to the advent of cloud based machine learning services, this has now become applicable and accessible to a lot more customers. Now, to give you some statistics, let's say in 2018, just about when SageMaker started, our
Right.
customers used to deploy maybe a dozen models.
Hmm.
Today, our customers deploy millions of models.
Oh.
Okay, and at that point of time, our customers would, the state of the art models that they would train would maybe have, 20 million parameters or so, and now they have more than 100 billion parameters. You know,
Is that
Amazon
because deploying the
SageMaker.
models is that much easier? I mean, are they deploying that many more because, or is it access to GPU, or what is it making it easier to deploy all the models?
Yeah, and it's basically the cloud-based tools that we have come up that has made it much easier to do machine learning. So if you look at the end-to-end machine learning workflow, you start with data preparation and then do model training and then do model deployment and so on. And previously, customers used to spend a lot of time doing the undifferentiated heavy lifting of building this infrastructure. And what these cloud-based services have done, whether it's service like Amazon SageMaker, or whether the AI services like the language services we have,
Mhm.
like translate and transcribe or textract and all this, is they've really taken out the heavy lifting from this whole process. So if you're starting with SageMaker, a customer no longer has to build the ML infrastructure. We build it for them. And
Hmm.
all they have to do is just focus on building the models. And that is why, Amazon SageMaker has become one of the fastest growing services in the history of AWS. And that tells you the amount of momentum we have had.
Hmm.
Let me give you a few customer examples.
Please.
Intuit uses machine learning on AWS for the tax software. So they're automatically able to look at your tax expenses and found a few deductible expenses.
Hmm.
Domino's Pizza, they had a project called Project 310 where they wanted to have a pizza ready for pickup within 3 minutes of an order and have it delivered within 10 minutes of an order.
Wow.
They were able to do it by using machine learning to predict when a pizza would be ordered.
Uh, oh, they're actually starting the order before the order comes in.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then you have Georgia Pacific, who is using machine learning to help their operators figure out what's the speed at which the paper rolls should be operated. And they were able to improve their paper quality by almost 40% and reduce paper tears. Then we had Bayer Crop Science. What they did is they took, machine learning models they developed on AWS services and then put them on cell phones, gave these cell phones to farmers, and then the farmers were able to use those cell phones in their fields to see whether there were weeds and pests and so on.
Ah.
Okay. And then, we have the Port of Vancouver. The Port of Vancouver is using one of our services called Panorama, that they use to look at containers coming in and figure out the codes on the containers and then trace the containers to the port. So it's something that we are seeing go across all geos. We are seeing this go across every segment, be it finance, healthcare, media and entertainment, software. And there is a lot more to do, but this is really starting to transform the way that customers are doing their business. And I gave you all these examples, Georgia Pacific, Domino's Pizza, and so on, because I really wanted to get the point across that machine learning, unlike, say, a few years back, machine learning is no longer just meant for a few companies.
Hmm.
Companies across the board are using it to transform the customer experience.
Hmm. Well, I know that, one of the problems that the companies have is that the data needs to be prepped before it can be mined for intelligence, always. Plus, of course, they need an enormous amount of storage. How does SageMaker help with these problems?
So on SageMaker, we take care of the entire machine learning workflow, data preparation, as you mentioned, being a very important part of it, where data scientists often end up spending more than half of the time. So we have a number of features in SageMaker. One of them is Data Wrangler, the SageMaker Data Wrangler, that provides you a no-code visual way of doing all of the data preparation. So you
Hmm.
come in, you can, with a single click, connect to multiple data sources. It could be S3, it could be Redshift, it could be Snowflake. So you can use any of these data repositories and then pull in the data. And again, with a few clicks, you can choose the kind of data transformations you want to do. And we
Hmm.
have built data transformations that are customized for machine learning. So, we have more than 300 different data transformations. And then once you have done all the clicks and you don't need any code. Now, if you want to write custom code, you can still write custom code. So there is a way in there where you can inject your custom code. But for many common data transformations, you don't have to write any code.
Hmm.
And so this is what really makes the process of data prep much faster and much easier.
Hmm.
And
Interesting
then
that.
there,
Go ahead. I think it's really interesting that it'd be low code or no code because that platform is really getting big throughout enterprise IT. I didn't realize it was in SageMaker.
yeah, and we give choice to our customers. So there is SageMaker Data Wrangler that lets you get to a no code, low code way of doing data preparation. Then using our notebooks, you can still do all of your data preparation using a traditional code centric way of doing it. And we're making it accessible to access other services. So if you want like to use AWS services like EMR, many of our customers want to do Spark based coding. They want to use our notebooks, but they want to use EMR as the backend for it. So
Hmm.
today you can seamlessly connect from Studio onto EMR, from SageMaker Studio onto EMR. So the way we look at it, rightfully as you pointed out, James, is that data preparation takes up a lot of time. And then when you look at data preparation, there is structured data preparation, which you can do with, SageMaker Data Wrangler and notebooks. Then there is
Right.
unstructured data preparation, which is images and video and LiDAR and text. And
Right.
for that, we have SageMaker Ground Truth
Oh.
that lets you label images and label text and so on. So we have been really looking at this problem of data preparation very holistically, and we have a number of features in SageMaker that make it much easier, reduce costs, and make the developer much more productive.
Hmm. Well, what about the issue of bias and explainability in machine learning models? I mean, it's become not just a tech issue, but really a social issue because, say, a bank or another institution, gives or does not give someone a loan, and someone wants to know, like, why was this loan issued or denied? And the bank says, well, we're using an algorithm. The bank needs to be able to explain what the parameters of that algorithm were. I mean, how does SageMaker handle this issue?
I'm glad you brought this up because these are important issues that we all need to be very thoughtful about. And at Amazon, we even when we're not at work, these are issues that we spend a lot of time on, and that is why we regularly talk to our customers and policymakers and researchers and academics to make sure we are doing this in the right way.
Hmm.
Now, within SageMaker, we have a feature called Amazon SageMaker Clarify. And what Clarify does is it gives you tools to measure bias in your data sets. And
Hmm.
so there are a number of different measures that you can use. And also it's a very visual, no code way of doing it. You can basically choose which measures of bias you want to use. And
Right.
it also explains the predictions that a model is making.
Hmm.
So you can, so, if you're using it and let's say a model is predicting that's, you're using it for, let's say, a customer churn example. And
Mhm.
let's say the model is predicting these customers may churn. You can use it to say, why do you think that the customer is going to churn? So it converts the insights into actionable insights.
Hmm.
And then we have another feature in SageMaker called SageMaker Model Monitor, where you can monitor the models dynamically for things like drift, concept drift, data drift, and so on. So at Amazon, we are putting in significant resources. This is something that is always top of mind for us. And we are
Hmm.
putting in significant resources, coming out with tools like Clarify and ensuring that we provide the right features to our customers so that they can take this into account.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, and then there's also, of course, the nature of edge computing, which is really growing rapidly. Some people say that edge will overtake cloud in terms of its, power and size. I mean, and of course, one of the issues is, where is the data crunched? Is it crunched out there with a microcontroller, or is the data sent back home to be crunched? I mean, how about SageMaker and machine learning at the edge?
So, SageMaker, we launched a feature called SageMaker Edge Manager. And the goal behind SageMaker Edge Manager was to make it easier for customers to do machine learning at the edge. And so I referenced the example before of Bayer Crop Science, who are taking models developed on SageMaker Edge Manager, which is, SageMaker Neo, which is a subset of SageMaker Edge Manager, and they take these models and then deploy them on cell phones that are then given to farmers,
Hmm.
okay, who can then use it for figuring out pests and weeds and so on. And
Mhm.
so what SageMaker Edge Manager does is it can take your models, it can optimize them almost up to a factor of 2x in performance. It can compress your models so that they fit in memory constrained devices on edge devices, and then
Mhm.
you can deploy them on a variety of platforms. And we support like NVIDIA platforms, we support ARM platforms, we support Qualcomm platforms, and a
Mhm.
bunch of other platforms. And so, this makes it really easy for customers if they want to train their models in the cloud, deploy them on edge devices, and even then manage these models that are deployed on edge devices. Because you don't want to just deploy a model and then forget about it. What SageMaker Edge Manager does is even allow you to manage these models that have been deployed at the edge.
Hmm. All right. So say customers are having some challenges with SageMaker. I mean, what might be some typical challenges, but probably not everything goes perfectly with. I mean, any recommendations to handle these issues?
We always approach at AWS, we are really always approaching things by working backwards from what our customers need. In fact, 90% of our roadmap is driven by what our customers tell us are the big issues. And this is a continuous journey where we'll continue to make it easier for customers to do machine learning, like continue to improve performance, continue to lower the cost, continue to improve developer productivity by providing them more tools, and so on. One of the things, for example, is that customers have said is, we want to make machine learning accessible not just to data scientists, but to a wider audience,
Right.
because, the demand for data scientists and ML practitioners is kind of going through the roof. So that is something we would be interested in, is how do we make machine learning even easier? Uh,
Is that the low code factor, or is there something else that makes it easier?
we will be looking at, there's not, I don't want to get into details of a roadmap, and I hope we'll have announcements later on at reInvent.
Yes.
But there are multiple ways we think we can look at to make machine learning accessible to even more people.
Hmm.
So that's one vector that we want to look at. And
Okay.
then as models have become more complex, like I mentioned, 3 years back, the biggest models used to be like 20 million parameters. Now you're looking at models with more than 100 billion parameters.
Wow.
And
Okay.
as models get bigger, performance was always important, but performance keeps getting more important. And so we will be looking at techniques on how we can push the performance frontier even more. And then, as companies do, as customers do predictions with models, sometimes they say, you know what, can I be doing serverless predictions where, I just have the endpoint up only during the duration of doing this. So there are a number of vectors we're looking at broadly along the space of making machine learning more accessible, continuing to improve the performance of machine learning models, continuing to reduce the cost and improving the developer productivity. And the one thing, the one analogy I would give this is if you go back and look at many other industries, it could be the automotive industry, it could be the software industry, each one of them started as kind of a niche activity. And then a process of industrialization made it easy to mass produce it and deploy it in volume. It
Right.
started with the automotive, same thing, software development went through this whole process.
Hmm.
And in my mind, machine learning is going through a similar process where it started with being a niche. And then we are now adding in a lot of stuff in Amazon SageMaker, like, a CI/CD system, which we call SageMaker pipelines that allows you to do continuous integration, continuous deployment.
Right.
IDE, which was the world's first machine learning IDE, tools like debuggers and profilers. So, all of the features and tools that made software an industry and made it widely applicable, kind of similar thing is happening in machine learning where we make it widely accessible and kind of industrialize it so customers can deploy it at scale. And you'll see us do a lot more of that.
You've talked about this a little bit, but I'd love to get your sense of where you see the future of machine learning going. Say we have this conversation in the year 2025. What will machine learning look like several years out?
I think the next phase, of machine learning will deliver what scientists dreamed of when they came up with machine learning, which is truly industrializing and democratizing machine learning. And I
Hmm.
think we are at the cusp of a major shift where industries across the board are going to make machine learning integral to how they operate and how they serve their customers. Just like Amazon.com has been innovating with machine learning and transforming the customer experience. I do think machine learning is going to get accessible to a lot more people. Currently it's accessible to ML developers, data scientists, and so on. But I think we'll come up with tools where we make it much easier for a wider set of personas to do it. I think you're going to see a lot more automation. We have already gone around that with a feature called SageMaker pipelines that allows you to do CI/CD, so automated deployment and so on. I think you're going to see much more automation of that. We have gone around the path of automatically creating your machine learning models. So we have a feature called SageMaker Autopilot, where as a customer, you just bring your data. The system takes care of preparing your data, training your model, deploying your model. The whole thing happens automatically. I think you'll probably see that now. It happens today for some sort of use cases. It doesn't happen for everything. So you'll probably see a lot more automation in all forms: automation of the machine learning generation, the model generation, automation of the deployment, automation of the processes, and just this general concept of industrialization. And then I think you're going to see a lot more interesting applications, like, over the last few years, especially with things like, some of these latest innovations that we are seeing on text processing. We are seeing some truly remarkable capabilities being worked on. And so I do think machine learning will become much more integral, in how we do finance, in how we do healthcare, and how we do manufacturing, and a number of these domains.
What is the text advantage that you're talking about? I had not heard about that.
the the
I think
tech,
you mentioned something about some advances in the way text was handled with machine learning. Did I understand you properly?
yeah. So if you look at the latest, kind of the large models or the natural language processing models that have come up, the
Right.
BERT based, BERT was the first one, and then there's GPT-2, GPT-3, and so on.
Right. Yep.
These have been able to really change the way that we are able to process natural language text. And so we do think that is going to open up a new set of capabilities that will make it much easier to have to be processed, to do natural language processing and text processing, document processing, intelligent document processing, processing of forms, and so on. So that would probably lead to a lot more automation of these capabilities.
Interesting. Bratin, it's going to be interesting to watch it change over the next several years. I very much appreciate you sharing your expertise today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Pleasure to be here.